All right, so today we're going on a bit of a journey. We're going to dive into a lost chapter of intellectual history, a story about an idea that was so disruptive, it was pretty much erased from the books. We're looking at the parable of a severed chain in human thought.
So where does our story even begin? The source material calls it the Shadowlands of human thought. Just think about that for a second. It's this place full of forgotten, suppressed ideas, a place that's completely off the map of mainstream thinking.
I want you to picture someone, let's call them the Seeker. They're exploring this giant, imaginary vault of ideas. But they're not in the main hall, where all the well-lit, famous philosophies are. No, they're taking a journey way outside of conventional history into a place that feels different.
And way back in a corner of this vault, under a sign that literally says dark and obscure, our seeker finds something. It's just a single dusty ledger. Seems kind of out of place, right? But this book, this is the key to the whole story. So they blow the dust off the cover, and the title is, wow, The Lost Ethics of the Nihilist Cults. Now this wasn't just some tract about how nothing matters. No, this ledger held something way more radical. A powerful, coherent worldview that someone had clearly tried very, very hard to bury.
So, what in the world were these lost ethics? Well, the ledger laid out a whole system for how to live that operated on its own rules. Think about it. Most ethical systems we know look outward for answers, to a god, to the law, to some universal good. This system, it looked inward. It argued you could build a totally meaningful moral life without any of that outside stuff. It functioned completely beyond the grasp of traditional reason.
And right here, you can see exactly why it was so controversial. Mainstream thought, both then and now, is pretty much built on this shared belief in some kind of objective, universal purpose. But the lost ethics? It didn't just poke holes in that idea, it flat out rejected it. It said, nope, you don't need that to build a meaningful life. And the consequences of that rejection? They were huge. This worldview wasn't just debated and then faded away. It was actively silenced. It was almost completely wiped from the public record, never really given the chance to grow. All that was left were these little fragmented whispers, in the margins of history. Just like the ledger our seeker found.
Which, of course, brings us to the big question. Why? Why was this idea considered so dangerous that it had to be intentionally shut down?
The answer really is simple: power. The dominant institutions of the time, we're talking the government, the church, the academic world, they saw these ideas as a massive threat. They didn't just call them wrong. They used words like dangerous and heretical. And you only pull those words out when an idea threatens the entire system. What they were afraid of was basically a domino effect. First, this worldview starts to catch on. Then, that fundamental belief in a shared purpose, the thing holding society together, it starts to erode. And once that foundation is gone, they believed the whole moral and legal system built on top of it would just crumble into chaos. The status quo would be destroyed. But our seeker keeps reading, and they start to realize there's another layer to this. The story doesn't just end with suppression. There's a clever twist, and the secret is hidden right there in the ledger's name.
It really makes you think, doesn't it? Why use the word cults? It's such a loaded term. It's meant to discredit something, to make you turn away. But what if that wasn't its only purpose?
This is what the source calls the uncanny hook. It's actually a brilliant psychological tool. When you brand something as a secret, as forbidden, as part of a cult, sure, you warn a lot of people away, but you also create this irresistible pull for the curious ones, for the people who already suspect the official story isn't the whole story. So the name nihilist cults was a total double-edged sword. For most people, it was a big red keep-out sign. But for the seekers, the skeptics, the explorers of ideas, it was an invitation. It was a challenge to go find the very secret knowledge they were being told to fear. And that's why these ideas were never really destroyed. They're still here, as the text says, like potent, unmoving shadows. They're just waiting in those dark, obscure corners of history for the next person who's brave enough to look where the mainstream is too scared to even glance. Which really makes you wonder, what other shadows are out there just waiting to be found?